Good evening, everyone. Just here, very glad to be here and welcome our guests, Brother Dominic Molden, Brother Ed Whitfield, and Brother Maurice Cook. And so I will just go on and open up the floor for quick introductions since we have lots of content and three speakers. Uh, Gave a little bit of introduction, but Dominic, if you could share introduction on yourself, two highlights, and then we'll pass it to Ed and Brother Maurice, and we'll dig in. Pass it to you first.
To highlight, I've been a long time community organizer in social movement work in Washington, D.C. And the second highlight, I'm fortunate and blessed to be working with Justin and four communities in Memphis trying to develop the largest Black controlled land trust in the United States. And I'll pass it to Ed.
Um, Good evening, everybody. I'm frequently the oldest person in the room, and I'm probably assuming that I am. I've lived during 9 different decades, which, quite frankly, does not make me 90 years old, but it means I was around in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the aughts, the tens, and the 20s. And I've been doing social justice work since I was 13 or so, old enough to realize that the United States was an imperialist country that kept intervening in places in Latin America and the Middle East in ways that were just unaccountable by the rhetoric that it offered Latin America, the Middle East, and the Far East and the Vietnam. And it absolutely no sense to me. And the more I asked about it, the more I came to realize the nature of the country we live in and the need to build kind of community structures that are to produce an independent voice that was different from the dominant voice, the dominant and kind of irrational voice that our government provided for us. So I'm glad to be involved here in this discussion around mutual aid, and hopefully I'll have some contribution to it that may be of use. And I pass it, I guess, to Maurice.
Brother Maurice.
Hey, peace and blessings, everybody. Number one highlight is that I've been with my wife and I have been together for 30 years, and I believe she's going to stick with me through the night and through all my shortcomings. She may still stay around tomorrow morning, so we'll see. Pray for me on that one. But that's definitely the biggest highlight. Um, Second, I'm absolutely blessed to have encouraged people to help other people and take care of each other. I think, that's definitely been, one of the greatest blessings that I've experienced that, somehow through the work that, that we've been doing, more and more people want to do the thing that comes the most natural to us, and that's to care up and love up on each other. And that's it.
Okay. So we have lots of wisdom in the space, and uh, let's dig in. A quote to start us off with. Love of others they deserve. If that exists in the world, then it exists for everyone. Uh,
Justin, you're breaking up.
can you all hear me?
Now we can.
Yeah, but you need to repeat the question because you were breaking up.
Gotcha. So the first question that I have is, what values and practices must be preserved for an institution to keep its soul? What values and practices must be preserved for an institution to keep its soul?
Let me start by saying the obvious, which is a certain level of transparency, honesty, and democracy, which is to say collective involvement in the important, particularly the highest level decision takes place within the group. In the absence of that, then obviously the soul of the institution or organization belongs to something other than the people themselves. And whatever this thing is that is other than the people themselves takes away from the capacity, the agency of the people themselves um, uh, to govern, regulate, control, manage our community institutions in a way that can maximize benefit to the community rather than to some subsets of the community whose benefit is inimical to the community itself.
Uh, to build on that, I want to talk about individual and collective accountability in the context of bearing witness to the people. So, in my experience of organizing for 40 years now and being a part of community-based organizations, some who are doing well with forming their institutions, and some who have done well but are losing their formation. One of the biggest things I've noticed is that it's been easier to build an institution with self accountability and collective accountability when I feel like I'm responsible for the institution as an individual and collectively, because it's the individuality that is not the I individual, it's the we. But I'm taking responsibility for myself and the we. And I think that's a really good thing to look at in today's world where there's so much lack of accountability or confusion about accountability.
Thank you, Dominic. And Brother Maurice, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's tough. I mean, because we're really talking about the types of institutions that support the collective, and obviously, um, that's a niche when it comes to institutions. So, I think of institutions as an agreement between more than one person. So you have to have at least two people, and that's the beginning, a set of agreements. The way that I've seen that folks have been able to remain accountable to one another is to stay focused on the original intention or purpose or motivation of that agreement. And when folks move outside of that, that's when a lot of the problems happen. Um, I believe we're here today to talk about our types of institutions, more informal institutions, on a collective agreement in the way we want to treat one another, in the way we believe that the state should support the treatment of the people it's supposed to take care of. And so that becomes a little more challenging because you have so many varying interests and intentions. So it's tough. But for our types of organizations, for our types of agreements and principles, it really starts, with that original core agreement of why folks got together in the first place. I'm being clear about that.
So let me give a quick synthesis, and I want to open this conversation, Dominic, Ed, and Maurice. So feel free to chime in as folks are saying something. But three things that I was hearing on lifting up how we need to hold governance sacred, and that in order for us to be able to maximize the benefit of the missions of the work that's happening, that's really around governance and democracy. I hear Brother Dominic lifting up that it's around individual and collective accountability and bearing witness to the people, he said. So the question I want to ask, right, as we're getting deeper in this, is when we talk about bearing witness to the people, I want us to all hold what does that mean to bear witness to the people? Um, and then I heard Brother Maurice lift up that it's an agreement, that it's an agreement between more than one person, that he sees an institution being about between more than one person. And so as we talk about bearing witness and what that means of the people, the question that I would like to lift up is, and we talk about governance and where decisions are made, and then who's making those decisions. How do we prepare those and steward, right, the next generation, rather than simply replace our leaders? How do we steward the next generation, and how do we prepare the next generation to be able to bear witness to the people?
One thing I'd like to say is that we have to be intentional in our critique of individualism as a motivating factor in how we move and what we do. And while the idea of taking individual responsibility is an important concept in terms of the accountability that we offer the collective that we are part of, that each of us, only has full control over, or the largest control over, our individual capacity. We at the same time need to be very, very careful with the sense that we're all trained from a very, very young age. I mean, our educational system, our entertainment system, our whole view of civilization, our ethos is often connected with establishing that, do something for yourself. Uh, I can't count the number of times I've been told, why you keep trying to save the world? Why don't you just do something for yourself? And um, and it's because I think we'd have a better world if we were all trying to save the world, as opposed to doing something for ourselves in such a way that often endangers much of the rest of the world. And so I think that kind of establishing this critique of that kind of individualism, the assumption that individual greed will ultimately lead to the common good, which is something that we're trained with. We're told that so many times that we can't really count the number of utterances of that we've heard, and people need to hear explicitly a different kind of lessons, that we are social beings, that our livelihood is connected with our ability to work together for the common community good, and that by doing so, we preserve our individual selves to the extent that's possible, and not the other way around.
Thank you, Ed. Dominic, Maurice?
Uh, Maurice, you can go, then I'll go.
Well, I really like the focus on the transference of responsibility to the next generation. Um, I think we've struggled with that in our movement. It's been a struggle, and few and far between do we have models that are held up for us to say, oh well, this was done in a way that kind of aligns with what I would say would be the community value. And we have too many stars and too many leaders and too many cooks in the kitchen who are the only ones who have the recipe and all of these things. So it's been a struggle in my analysis. Um, I think one of the tactics that we use for our organization is to at the very beginning try to embed younger people in all facets of the work of the organization, and centering and being upfront and transparent that what you see today will fade away, will die. That's the nature of things. And it is saying up front, it is really your choice to carry forth this work and this mission. And I just think it's just really important to say that on the onset, that that's the expectation of the elders within the organization, and that's what we're working to create and to build. And obviously we need younger people to take on that responsibility, and it's tough.
Thank you, Maurice and Brother Dominic.
Yes. So for me, I think when I focus on the next generation, I want to build on what Ed and Maurice talked about. First with Ed, that we are indoctrinated with individualism and not the kind of a healthy individual that builds community, but a self-centeredness. And then what Maurice said earlier is that the institutions we're trying to build aren't mainstream institutions. So that's the first challenge, is understanding that the next generation is not trying to become a brand. And that's a real challenge. You're trying to develop a countercultural way of being. So to me, it's about building and learning information. And our biggest challenge is that we haven't created enough formation systems for people to figure out how to live differently. So in order to get to that next generation, we have to focus on a community of practice of how we live together and how we do things together to create a society of mutual support, right? And a society of mutualism.
Woo! Dropping nuggets. Okay, so I want to open up the floor and pull some folks in. Sister Donna, I know you normally got some fire to share. Sister Susan, I see you on screen. Ayoka, I hear that you have a comment that came in person, and so let's unpack some of this. One, I want to know, do we is there a shared acknowledgement here on the call that we are in danger? That we are in danger from the individualism that is steeping into so many of our institutions. Can I get a nod of heads, a raise of hands? Is there a challenge on that? Just trying to see where we are on the call and where we are in person. Alula, if you'll help support that. Okay. I seen some nods. Okay. Donna. Okay. Great, 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 great. And so let me ask you all this, because I know we got a lot of young folks that are here as well. Um, do we also share an agreement around not seeing the leadership that we would like to be able to see stewarded within the younger generation within our institutions? Is there a consensus? Will we challenge that? What are folks thinking? I got an amen in the chat that we are in serious danger from Brother Dominic.
We have a response in person from Ayaka.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Ayoka.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you and thank you. So I don't know if you're speaking about just locally, but a thought that I have is I still remember when Ayanna Presley wanted to run for, um, I see you're nodding already. When she was running for office, she was told, not yet. It's not your time. And elders were saying to her, um, I understood the admonition, but equally it was gatekeeping. And obviously she was successful and she's still trailblazing today. So with that, I think we have an issue of balance. Um, as I look at our, political landscape in Boston today, and I look at some of our, fallen soldiers that are on the younger side, including recently, um, they've made some missteps where it seems like had they leaned on the elders, that some of these missteps, could have either been mitigated or, not happened at all, or at least been handled differently so that they could have been insulated to where the results didn't have to be as tragic as they were. So I really struggle, with that question because younger people have a right to lead. Younger people have a right to have their voices heard and their needs met. As older people, you can't always speak for younger people. What worked for me in my day and you in your day may not be the same. And equally, things change. So maybe what I wanted as a younger person, last year, maybe that's different this year. The landscape is ever changing, but our minds don't change as quickly. So with that, I don't have a solution, but I resonate with the question in that young people need preparation. Young people have to be willing to listen. They have to be willing to take advice, not meaning that they have to be controlled, but I think there's a way to maintain balance. And then as elders, I think it's important to guide and to make space, to undergird and to put, what I consider to be, bumpers on the gutters. If you were bowling, it's like, how can you make it a safe environment and, make it a space to where there's no other answer but success. And then finally, I feel like the greatest example that I could give is like, from the Bible, you know, um, when David, was such a great king and, he was God's man and he had such great plans to do this and that for God. And God said no, regardless of the reason, God said no. But, what did David do? He made sure that he gave his sons the, the best of everything that he needed training so that, what was to come, was built with care, with greatness and, would stand. And so I just feel like, the illustrations of what can work are there. We're just in a space where there's just so much individuality that I think it's challenging. And we're in the space of lacking patience. And even, and I acknowledge it. I used to be more patient than I am now in ways, right? It's like I can give my attention for so long and then I'm ready to move on. And so I can understand in a lot of ways as to where we are, but but obviously we have to commit to a solution.
Thank you, Sister Ayoka.
And Justin, we got one more in person from Brandy.
Okay.
Thanks, y'all. I appreciate this question. And I think, for sure, as Ioka was saying, we have to look at and at how we understand balance. I also, the tension I feel around this question is I feel like there's a lot of ways where we're like, oh, young people aren't ready yet. Oh, they, have this cultural idea or that cultural idea. And the thing that comes up for me first is I'm like, well, they didn't build the world. Like they didn't build the world that trained them. They didn't build the world that they've been living in. And so, we're always in this conversation about whether or not our young people are right, and not so much the conversation about whether or not we've actually built structures that successfully and effectively model not being individual for them, not being consumerist for them, not being materialist for them, not being hyper competitive for them. Because if we didn't model it, then I don't know where we think that I mean, and some of them do anyway, like still grab onto like, this all looks all wrong to me, so I'm going to try some other stuff. And then when they step out of what we think are the bounds, we're like, nope, that shows your immaturity. That shows that you don't understand, quote, how the world works. Maybe they do understand some of how the world works. And they're like, I think the world sucks. And I would like for it to not work this way anymore. Um, and I just want to name that because I feel like it's a perpetual thing that we do that really is incredibly dismissive of young people, that ignores the fact that young energy has always powered our social movements, and that precisely because they're not as wedded to the structures that all the rest of us older have built around us, so they're more willing to take risks, they're more willing to put stuff out there where we're like, well, I don't know how that's going to affect my home values, so I don't know if I can do all that right now. um and yeah, absolutely. Like there's a need to support, to truly mentor, to truly deeply understand folks and seek to understand their gifts and help to coach them into leadership, but also recognizing that that leadership includes being a full human being who absolutely will make mistakes and who, in fact, needs to make mistakes of their own, because that is how all of us learn. There's things you learn from your successes, and there's a bunch of other critically important things you learn from the places where stuff did not go well. So, like, as we're talking about how we do this, like, where are we creating the structures that would actually create this care, that would actually create this modeling? And how are we actually looking at young people as equitable partners and not infantilizing them the way that we do throughout their lives from the time that they're very small?
Woo! All right, hold on. I'm writing, taking notes. And Sister Naomi, I see you. Sister Donna, I see you. Let me put a couple of things in there and mix it up a little bit. So one, was that Sister Natalie that was just speaking? Was that after Sister Ayoka? Is that accurate?
Randy.
Randy, thank you. So I'm hearing a couple of things. I'm hearing a return back to this individualism piece that Brother Dominic brought up, specifically around how institutions are not modeling, and I hear an echo right from Sister Brandy, specifically around like we don't have institutions that are not that are modeling how to not be materialistic, how to, and it's a perpetual. I heard a perpetual dismissal of young people. Um, and so therefore the question became, how are we looking to prepare and create more equitable partners in the next generation? um is there a response that any of our guests have directly to that, before I try to connect to the next question? And then Naomi and Donna, I'm keeping that on thread as well, just trying to keep a couple of these pieces moving, so don't forget what you were going to say.
I had something brief to say.
Yeah.
I fully support what Sister Brandon was saying about the world that young people find themselves in is not a world that they created. Um, but we also have to remember it was also not a world that we created, because we started out in this world as young people in a world that we hadn't created either. Um, so hopefully there's a kind of overall social accumulation of knowledge that goes along with having experienced and tried to engage in and transform and adjust the world that we find ourselves in. I was had a conversation with a young person who said it shouldn't have taken y'all this long. We ought to be free by now. Y'all just didn't do what you were supposed to do. And I'm going, I don't know what book is that says exactly how long it's supposed to take. All I know is I was trying best I could, and I hope that you do the same. Try as best you can, and go as far as you can, which is what I did my best to do. But you're gonna find as you get a little older that impatience is a wonderful thing. So what we want to do is we want to combine the courage of young people with the wisdom that has come along, with age, and try to not do that backward, which is to combine the wisdom of the youth with the courage of old folks who are not all that courageous anymore. We don't want to do that backwards. It can be problematic, and there's some dangers of that taking place under some conditions.
Thank you for that. Sister Naomi, I saw I saw a response. Give us some feedback, and then I want to take it back to our guest speakers to ask a couple more questions. You got
Yeah, this has been
Naomi.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes,
This is
ma'am.
Yeah, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I particularly want to pick up on things that Maurice and Brandy were saying. I think sometimes it can be that we get tripped up by the things that seem to be, and in many ways were, our real strengths. So one example of that is that when something is starting off and beginning to take shape, having a leader or a group of leaders who are really charismatic and really inspire people, and people just want to be with them and go along with them, that can be a really wonderful thing, but it can get in the way of transition, even if the people are not ego-driven or they're not being problematic. They're just, their presence and their personality can come to seem almost indispensable, and that can be a real problem. And the other is it's wonderful when organizations model respect for elders, because so often the larger culture does not. But that wonderful thing of respecting elders, respecting the wisdom and the experience and so on, can go along with disrespecting younger people and thinking that, yes, they need to be guided, they need to be taught and so on, but they also need to be learned from. And, as an elder, I mean, I'm 80. It's really, really exciting for me to learn from young people who've grown up in a world so utterly different from the world that I grew up in, although, as a number of you have pointed out, it's the world that we and our elders bequeathed to us and then to them. But they know things that I don't know, not just how to deal with technology, but other stuff about how the world is working, and I just hanging out with them, I learn so much. And then the final thing is the importance of individuality. I think individualism, as people have been saying, that is, it's all about me. And I mean, whether it's about my gain and my enrichment, or even about my own virtue, that's a real problem. And we have to think relationally and collectively. But individuality is about quirkiness and difference and idiosyncrasy. And I think we don't have enough of that. And I think we need to delight in each other's differences, both the culturally shaped differences and also individual and idiosyncratic differences. So I'm all in favor of that, even as we downplay the separateness that individualism leads us to. And finally, some advice that I've gotten from some other people I've been in activism with is that one of the things we should aim for, and this is particularly the case for those of us who are older, is we should aim for being good ancestors. That is, we're not going to solve the problems. We're not going to create the world we want to live in, but we want to be ancestors that those who follow us can look back on and be grateful for. So I'll stop there.
Um, Sister Donna, and then I'm going to transition us to another question. Sister Donna, what do you got? What you got
Yeah,
for us?
just quickly, I think that we, in quotes, have to be careful who the we is we're talking about. It's like I think we use a lot of we's and us's and whatever. And sometimes there's so many differences in terms of, is it we, the Black community? Is it we older Black people, or we younger Black people, Southern, Northern? There's so many complexities of where we are right now. And we've been studied to an amazing degree that people know Black community in a way that they used to not know us. And so I feel like where we are in a safe, not relatively safe space that we can talk honestly with each other, we have to check our assumptions about each other. We just don't know.
Mm. Thank you, Donna. Um, So we have a society of mutualism that I heard coming through, right through some of the response, bringing that back. Like, what does it really look like for intergenerational exchange? Sister Donna bringing the fire with the nuances between who is the we that we're talking about, and offer up that when we get clearer on the we and who the big we is, that's also about affinity, right? How do we break out into different groups that allow for us to have, to your point, Donna, honest and candid conversations that get us to a more transformative space. Okay, so I want to highlight real quickly that I happened to take a trip to Uruguay earlier this year, and there was this real young brother that was on the trip. I'm gonna speak his name into presence, Brother Mike, and we got a chance to vibe and cook up some ideas. And so, Brother Maurice, I'm bringing this to you. I don't think that I've seen a finer example of like solidarity, mutual exchange, leadership development, like the whole works, because this was a 3 week trip, y'all. 3 weeks down in Uruguay to learn around social housing structures. And so couple things. One, uh, Brother Dominic helped to organize that trip, and Brother Maurice did not come on the trip. He created space for Brother Michael to come on the trip. And I just want to lift up, like, what was the thought process behind that? Any nuggets that you would want to offer as to the why? Like, uh, yeah, what and what were you hoping to get? And then maybe what was some of the post reflection as a result of that? And so, Brother Mike is, and whatever other context that you would like to offer as well, Maurice. But Brother Mike is probably around 25, you all 26, in DC. I don't think there could be any closer proximity, to the community. And so it was just really inspiring to see the beginning, before, middle, during, and after, as a witness to that. And to your point earlier, Brother Dominic, bearing witness to the people.
Well,
Maurice,
listen, that makes
yep.
me, yeah, that makes me very proud. I feel a lot of pride in that because, I see, he represents the very purpose of why the organization exists. So, um, yeah, it's time for me to begin the journey to fade to that next level, that different level. And it's time for others to do what is necessary to create a better world that they're going to live in. Um, I am ready to step back and watch the seeds bloom. And so that's what that's all about. And it's not a straight line. I know that brother disappeared on y'all sometimes, right? I know he faded away and disappeared. Y'all had to try to find him sometimes, right? Because he's young. And so it's a work in progress, day to day type of situation. But what a blessing. I mean, that is, to me, for me, that is the work. That is the movement work. And so I have a lot of hope, and I will continue to guide and push and model as best as I can. And I'm really proud and happy that y'all got to experience what that work looks like as he embodies the work that we do every day. Now, this brother, he provides a lot of support for our Black community in Washington D.C. He gives away free computers and trains people, seniors, young people, returning citizens. He provides unhoused encampment outreach every week. He does that. He runs a food hotline and delivers food to our people living in public housing, our people living on the street. So he does a lot of work.
Thank you for sharing, brother. Thank you for sharing. And I will open up the floor for another question. And I guess I'm trying to connect the dots. Try to frame the role that philanthropy has, right? When we talk about mutual aid, and like, or let me say, a role that resources, and so often we have to make decisions, and we have to.
Justin, you keep breaking up
Of
again.
mutualism.
Something happened with your audio.
Okay. Can you hear me clearer now?
Right now.
How's my sound now?
Whatever.
It's a bit clearer, but
Okay. Well, I know that we are at like a 10-minute marker. And so maybe I'll just ask the final question as a way to close this out. What does it mean to measure success? Not only by growth, but by repair, belonging. It can be that question, or how do we balance this flexibility and that we are trying to do? So if you will toggle between that from our guests, we've talked about society mutualism. We've talked about individualism that's creeping up, the importance of developing our leaders. And so the question becomes, how do we begin to measure success, not just by growth, but by repair, belonging?
okay. I like to start and keep it clear and simple. It's like Fred Hampton said, do you love the people? I think in this work, especially when we talk about it with our Memphis folks and Audrey Jordan, who talks about measuring love, I think that's the foundation upon which we need to build, right? Like we're measuring it on how we show love to our communities and how that love is demonstrated by building power with them so that they can control things in their communities. And then the legacy, like we said earlier, it was said so well, we become the ancestors that help us move towards freedom. So measuring success is measuring how much do we bear witness to loving our people.
Measuring success is how we bear witness to our people. Thank you, Dominic. Brother Ed, Brother Maurice, any final words on that?
Uh, yeah, I just want to say that I think it's important that we measure success at the margins and not at the center. And that's because, so much of what is dependent on the gross exploitation of those who are at the margins. And it's easy enough for many of us who live closer to the center to ignore margins and think, well, that's always going to be that way. This biblical explanation that people have used for years, like the poor shall always be with us, can be used as a justification for the grossest of greed and usury and exploitation to take place. So it's really, really important for us to try to set our relationship to marginalized communities to be that which we're trying to transform so that the margins, don't maintain a permanent position on the edge and the worst of everything, um, as though they were the tools for those in the center to achieve prosperity and comfort. Um, they're not tools, they're sacred. And it's to recognize the sanctity of the margins that should be, motive our measures of success.
Thank you, Brother Ed. Measuring success at the margins so that they are not permanently at the margins for others to achieve comfort. Thank you. And Maurice, you got any fire comments for us as we transition?
Well, I would just say, to me, success looks like being in a position where we don't have to demand anything because we already have the power. And so it's about a negotiation between those who perceive themselves as powerful, but those of us who actually have the power to self-determine what it is that we are trying to achieve and not depend on anybody.
Success is that we don't have to demand anything because we have power. And I would actually ask a follow-up question around power, but we are out of time and what it means for us to realize that we already have the power, right? And that's a interior conversation, which I think a lot of that is around mutualism. Because for us to get to mutualism, there's a lot of work that we have to do inside to appreciate that and understand that that's going against the current grain. You all, this has been an incredible dialogue today. I am going to close this out. I want to thank Sister Ayoka, Sister Brandy, Naomi, and Sister Donna specifically for your commentary and helping us to advance this conversation. I want to thank Brothers Dominic, Brothers Ed, and Brother Maurice. And I want to leave us with two last thoughts. I was also one of the folks that have had a lot of folks to pour into me, and as a result, try to function out of abundance in how I operate with generations that are coming even behind me. And so, the question that I would like to leave with everyone is: are we building, or are we not building? Are we building mutualism, or are we not building mutualism? Are we building the world that we want to live in, or are we not building the world we want to live in? And that's going to come from us radically aligning and getting information to build power around those values. So thank you very much for joining us. Our distinguished guest, I will follow up with each of you. And peace and love, everyone. Thank you.